Hi, I'm Rob Vanstone, and welcome to a change of pace edition of the Rider Rumblings video podcast. After basically a month of dissecting Riders lose to Calgary, Riders lose to Calgary, Riders about to play Calgary, will they lose to Calgary again? They've defeated Calgary 20-17, and we have a different angle to pursue today. We being yours truly and the estimable Murray McCormick, who is here with us again today, and my cone-headed dog Candy. So she's got an abrasion on one of her paws and needs to avoid providing herself with her own pedicure for the next few days. So I know the world needs to know that. Mur,
you go through more stuff with your dog than I've gone through with my kids in the last. It's crazy.
No, I love my girl. And there was a lot to like about the Rider game on Saturday, despite it was strange though. I wrote about it in my column in the Tuesday Leader Post. A lot of the things they were doing are a lot of the things that they did on Saturday in Calgary, except this time they won, which tells me that they were a lot more resourceful this time around than they were the previous two games. A lot of the things we thought they needed to do in order to beat Calgary didn't materialize, but they still beat Calgary. Just shows what we know, I guess, huh?
Praise to the football gods, because I really wasn't looking forward to a third straight decimation of the Rough Riders losing to the Calgary Stampeders. You kind of like them to win every now and again, that up and down, kind of the motions of the season and stuff. And Saturday's game gave us something, some light, some hope. They did a pretty good job at that. Pretty close. I know we can't say for sure, but they're pretty close to having a playoff spot in a home playoff game. I think they're, with 4 games, they win 3 of 4 or 2 of 4, and Calgary stumbles, they're going to have a home playoff game. So the whole picture and the whole mood and the whole atmosphere around the Rough Riders is different this week, as usually happens with a win. But don't you feel that way? It's just a little more optimistic. I know it's not a sunny day and it's pretty fall, but this feels brighter around Saskatchewan now the Riders have won. And we're not supposed to be affected by that, but we are still, our family members are happier, questions are better.
You know what I've noticed though is there still isn't a lot of buzz about the Rough Riders, about the CFL. Maybe it's the product, maybe it's everything that's going on, maybe it's COVID. I don't know what it is, but usually when the Riders hit a bit of a skid, and especially they lose to Calgary, my inbox fills up and my Twitter account is overrun. And even when the Rough Riders weren't playing that well, when they were losing, I wasn't getting a lot of feedback. I know that they've won, I'm not getting a lot of feedback. Maybe it's me, but it seemed to be there was a lot more. There was a lot more after the back-to-back losses to Winnipeg than there was after the back-to-back losses to Calgary, and then rising from the game in Calgary. There just hasn't been a lot. I don't sense that there's a lot of buzz about it.
You feel that way? It's about almost all sports. It might be a baseball playoff for the ages. I've been watching that. Home runs. Rosero is just an amazing athlete for the Braves. We got those cheating Astros. The NFL has been taken over by Brady again, so maybe there hasn't been as much buzz. I kind of get.
What about Teddy Bridgewater?
Yeah, Bridgewater.
Sorry.
Ben Roethlisberger too.
He beat Bridgewater.
It doesn't seem to be the buzz about sports that maybe you and I are used to in the fall. I don't know, maybe.
I feel jacked about it.
Yeah.
I really do. I love the fact that there's so much going on locally, and the NHL is starting, and I mean Cole Sillinger is playing for Columbus. I think that's a wonderful story. High school football's been really good. The Regina Thunder just finished an 8-0 season. I'm sure the Thunder and the Hilltops will meet again November 14th at Mosaic Stadium, I presume, for the league title. And who's to say that the Hilltops won't knock off the Thunder to win that, because those teams, there's not a lot separating those teams. Canada West football's going. There's so much going on. WHL's up. I'm really jacked about a lot of the things that are going on, but the Rough Riders, to me, just there's something about them that just doesn't seem to resonate this year. In 2019, that was such a joyous year to cover the team, and a lot of the principal figures are still front and center, but there just doesn't seem to be that buzz, that aura, but that it factor with this team, even though it's a respectable 6-4, that there was with the 2019 team. It's just a different vibe this year, and I don't think my enthusiasm for sports has waned. And I'm not suggesting that I'm not enthusiastic about the Rough Riders. It's just there just isn't that same zip
Yeah.
with regard to that football team. Am I misreading it?
Well, I think you're quite right. I also think we're getting through the dog months of the season. I've told you that. September and October
Mention
seem
dog.
to
Here's
be
my dog candy. Sorry.
seem to be the, especially this year with the shortened schedule. It doesn't seem to be as much. I don't know if it's urgency, but maybe that doesn't make sense. There just seems to be a quieter
There should be
time.
more urgency to these
There
games.
should be
There's
more. I know. That's what I'm thinking. I'm just contradicting myself here right now. But
No, you aren't. Yes, you are.
Yes, I am. But just and on a positive note, then maybe look at there should be a heck of a game in Montreal this weekend. These two 6-4 teams. I think the Riders have an advantage in the quarterbacks, but the top rushing team in the league with William Stanback against the top defensive rushing team in the league with the Rough Riders is an incredible battle going to be saw there. Eugene Lewis is one of the best receivers in the league. He's going to be playing.
Dick Weineke.
Dick Weineke, and now it's like, so you see, and then you look at Money Hunter. Money Hunter is I'm listing their 3 performers of the week in the Alouette Sweat.
Money Hunter should be an agent.
Oh, what a name
Would
for
that be
him!
a perfect name for an agent?
Yeah, so I think that would be
or
good.
a sitcom or a detective show.
Yeah, so there should be hype building up for this, but it's on the road. It's in Montreal, which traditionally the Riders don't draw as well. They do. Maybe this time there might be. I don't know if people can travel. There isn't that Rider presence at Montreal games that are at other games, and you think there would be, given the closest to the East Coast and how American families can get up here to see their guys play. But this weekend's game out, they're just, and there doesn't seem to be any buzz about it. I know it's only Tuesday. They haven't practiced yet, so that's kind of what's going to happen. But boy, I'm kind of looking forward to this Saturday game. I think it's going to be a slobber knocker, as they like to say, with barn burner. And it's going to be a lot of fun.
I wonder if it has something to do. I'm looking forward to this one too, and I'm hoping that maybe it has a bit of a rejuvenative effect on the Canadian Football League, or at least helps, because look at the Saturday triple header.
Oh.
Dog game, even worse game, and even the Rider game, even though it was 2017, it was interesting in the latter stages. It was close, but there weren't any real explosions in that game. There weren't any plays where you looked at them and thought, what an amazing play. It was just a grinded out football game. And 9-10 hours of football on a Saturday, and most of it's a waste of time. And the CFL just in general this year has not been that entertaining. And maybe there's just a CFL fatigue that's setting in, because I find you turn on a CFL game now and it feels like it's more out of obligation than out of sheer passion, especially when you've got, NHL center ice, and you've got the NBA season starting, and baseball's in the playoffs. There's so many things to watch on TV now as a sports fan. And the CFL just doesn't need to move the needle, because there's not the real promise of anything really extraordinary happening. And the Rider games, everything still stops for them. But the other games, it's just, I'll just keep an eye on them. They just aren't really grabbing me this year. And maybe that's just a me problem.
Could be. Do you think the triple header is a bit too much? And I know we do it every Sunday with the NFL. And actually a quadruple header if they have games from London that we sit there and we watch game after game after game after game. But the CFL triple headers, and I noticed that on Saturday, and we knew we're in for a long day regardless, late kickoff and things are going to happen. But boy, I kind of thought, maybe they just gone a double header on this, and maybe gone a double header Friday and Saturdays. Maybe that's a better way to do it. Maybe
that would be better. But you got to stay out of the way of the NFL. And
they do.
I don't mind a triple header if it's 3 good games, or even 2 out of 3.
But you can't hide the bad games in the CFL, Rob. You can do that.
No.
How many games? I was trying to think on Sunday when I was watching all the NFL games, how many good games there were. And there were a couple, and I can't list
this
them.
Past Sunday wasn't a great day for the NFL, especially the early games were just brutal.
So I caught up on some other shows on TV, but you're exactly right. So it didn't really catch me. But boy, it sure got better in the second half of the afternoon games, and the evening game was pretty good. And then last night, you get to see Seattle do what they did. But so I think maybe the triple head might be a bit much, but as a crazy sports fan, as my wife said, "What are you doing Saturday?" I says, "Well, triple header, dear. I'll see you Sunday morning."
I went for a bike ride. For that's something I never would have done once upon a time. Or if I had gone for a bike ride on the Saturday, I would have PVR'd the CFL games. Forget it. I mean, those just looked like they were going to be dogs just because of who was playing who. I went for a bike ride. I said I'll be back. I'll go pick up dinner at 6:30, and we'll have a meal before the Rider game, and then everything stopped for the Rider game. But
we did the same thing except for the bike ride.
It just.
But there was a good play on Saturday, and I want to bring this up earlier, so for people to leave us. I love the call with 3rd and 3.
Yeah.
Finally a call that said yes. Like can I say it? I cheered in my little office and the
And it
Cats.
hasn't been uncharacteristic for them to gamble in 3rd and 3 situations this year. Even in their own zone, even in their own side of midfield, they've done it. That was the most important one to date, and it was certainly the most productive one.
And it was a great call. And for people who don't realize that 2:43, the Riders were 3rd and 3. They could have taken the field goal and gone for the safety. Except they go for the touchdown to go up 19-10, 20-10 on Brett Leather's convert. And all of a sudden it was a game. I know things kind of got crazy at the end. That was great because we forget.
They needed those points.
They needed those points. What a great call by Jason Maas. I know he's been criticized by that. I don't know if Jason Maas made the cut. I love the way that Cody rolled out. I love the pass. I love how that's Moore's strength to just creating space. It was just a great call at a particularly special time when they needed it. And at the end of the game, you're looking at, holy smokes, they sure needed those points.
And I wondered too if having Shaq Evans and Duke Williams back or in the lineup, even though statistically they were not impactful on that play, suddenly the opposition's in a situation where they're not looking at Kyran Moore and thinking, okay, he's the guy we've got to stop on 3rd and 3, because suddenly they've got to worry about Shaq Evans. Suddenly they've got to worry about Duke Williams. Yeah. Braden Lenius had been slicing them up over the middle earlier in the game. So I think Braden Lenius had to be
There was a priority pick too, wasn't there? Wasn't there a Calgary pick? One of the BBs ran each other.
They kind of ran a bit of a, they kind of ran into the guy into coverage, but it was a pretty subtle. I mean, everybody does it. But suddenly Kyran Moore isn't going to necessarily get all the attention on the part of the defense. They're not thinking this is Kyran Moore time, because they've got to worry about Evans. They've got to worry about Duke Williams. So not only, I think Kyran Moore one-on-one with virtually anybody is a mismatch, but suddenly you've put Kyran Moore in a situation where you can play to his strength, an ability to beat somebody one-on-one, and that's not going to be the priority for the defense to stop. And it just seemed to be like picking an apple out of a tree for Jason Maas, for Cody Fajardo. That was such a great matchup and such a great call. And for all the heat that Jason Maas has absorbed this season, and I think a lot of it is warranted. Now you're seeing Jason Maas playing with a full deck in terms of a personnel, at least in terms of the so-called skill position. The offensive line is still porous, but a couple of aces. That call helped them overcome any deficiencies up front, because they just rolled out of trouble. If there was pressure, it wasn't going to get to Cody Fajardo because he's rolling out to the right and making a quick throw.
It was a great call. I loved it, and I'd just like to see more of that. But it's also, don't forget, Duke Williams got that onside kick. Now, I haven't watched the Rider formations on onside kicks. You don't really see that at practice a lot, but I wonder if Braden Lenius would have been in that spot, given his height, if Duke Williams wasn't on the team. But still, Duke Williams goes up high points the ball, cuts his onside kick. The Riders still didn't do much with it, unfortunately. I think that was the time count was right after that play, wasn't it? Right after the onside kick. I wrote that down.
Yeah, time count was with about 2 minutes left.
Yeah, Cody accepted responsibility for that, but someone should have been seeing what's going on with the clock, because that could have been huge.
Yeah, I mean, that game was way more interesting at the end than it should have been.
Yeah.
I mean, between that and the punt that goes out of bounds with a net gain of 8 yards, they gave Calgary some late gifts that, I'll say this at least it made the CFL game more exciting than it otherwise would have been. Riders.
When you see 3 turnovers and only 20 points, what does that say? 3 turnovers and 4 sacks. Shouldn't they have been able to generate a little bit more points, you think? Arguably. But you take what you get, eh?
Yeah.
20 points was enough. In the other 2 games, 20 some odd points wasn't enough.
I'm just trying to remember, what did they end up getting as a result after the Jeremy Clark pick?
That was.
Let me just see
here.
I
think that was the Kyran Moore.
Yeah, Clark. I think that was too.
Yeah. I actually prepared myself by taking notes, Rob. Now, the only problem is I have to be able to read them.
But they're not readable.
No, they're legible. I have Stanbeck in uppercase letters for some reason. If we want to.
Well, the Riders have. I mean, you just finished lighting somebody up for 200 yards, so they're going to have to pay attention to. Yeah, the Kyran Moore touchdown followed the Jeremy Clark interception and the return of 69 yards. Cody Fajardo runs for 4 yards on first down, then an incompletion, and then under a lot of pressure, Cody Fajardo just barely got the ball away on second down, and then Kyran Moore with the touchdown. You know, the previous the previous possession, or earlier in the quarter, there had been the interception by Webb.
Yeah.
And that was pretty massive too. Just the receiver seemed to be open, but the Webb read the play really well and just sagged back into the zone and made the catch. It looked, as soon as the ball was thrown, I thought, man, is he ever open? And suddenly Webb just backpedals. But then two plays later, the Rough Riders are punting.
Well, you look at Jacob Dearborn gets a pick, Webb gets a pick, Jeremy Clark gets a pick. I bet you money, most people couldn't even name who those three guys were before the game, before the depth chart came out. Webb a little bit because he played a little bit. Dearborn.
Last two times the Riders have won in Calgary, Bo Levi Mitchell, the last 4 interceptions Bo Levi Mitchell has thrown to the Rough Riders during a game that the Rough Riders have won in Calgary. The last 4 interceptions he's thrown in those situations have been somebody making his first CFL interception. Deron Carter, Jason Dearborn,
or Jacob.
Jacob Dearborn, blah, blah, blah. And then Dylan Webb and Clark. So he's making a lot of defensive backs look good, or even receivers turn into defensive backs.
He sure didn't look good, did he? That second half, that wasn't Bo Levi. But maybe on the touchdown drive, he looked like he came back a little bit to the regular self. But holy smokes, there's something going on with Bo Levi. And people hate him in Saskatchewan. You and I both respect him. We love watching him play. When he was on, he was incredible. And he's just not on right now. And I don't know what is going on. Like they had Kamar Jordan return. I kind of thought that'd have a big impact, and it didn't really seem to do that.
Even he made that one play down on the 1 yard line.
Yeah.
But aside from that, there wasn't a lot.
And Kadeem Carey, who's chewed up the Riders, did pretty well. But I think the Riders deserve credit for shutting him down.
He had 42 yards in the first half, and then they really shut him down in the second half.
Yeah, so that's give them credit. That was something they had to change. They had to do something about. Now we both know William Stanback is a whole other game. What a huge monster running back he is, and the league leading rusher. He runs downhill. He runs downhill hard. He can make cuts. Boy, that's going to be a fun matchup to watch to see what the Rough Riders do defensively to slow him down. But at least they have the game plan they can carry over from Carey a little bit. Carry over, get that? I can make punts like you.
You look at this is a game too where Micah Johnson has had such a good year for the Rough Riders. Hasn't gotten a lot of credit, but I think in many ways this is a Micah Johnson they were hoping to get in 2019, and he's been such a tower of strength inside. And if you look at he only had 1 tackle in Calgary, but it was a big tackle for a loss, and he's gobbling up personnel along the offensive line. Micah Johnson.
I thought he did that in 19, Rob. Sorry to interrupt. I thought not as impact, but he started. It was just a little bit overlooked because he was also battling a high ankle sprain and whatever he's got going on this year too. But I don't think he was as effective as everybody wanted him to be in 19. But I thought he was okay most of the time. He's not the 14 sack monster that he was with Calgary.
No, but he's really a factor inside.
He is. And he really is.
I don't think it's an accident that a lot of the other defensive linemen are able to eat this year, because he has got to be such a priority for opposing linemen. I mean, there was one game earlier this year where 3 people had laid a helmet or some pads on Micah Johnson. He just has to be paid attention to, and I don't think it's accidental that other players are enjoying a good year. And AC Leonard, I mean, this is a guy who wasn't expected to play at one point last week, ended up playing extremely well, had a key tackle for a loss, had a pressure on Bo Levi Mitchell, that ended up with a sack, ended up forcing a sack that was registered by Dion Lacey, but it was AC Leonard who was exerting the pressure there. Yeah. And so that was a really gutsy effort by AC, and I know there have been other conversations about him this year. I think we certainly have to single him out for the way he performed in Calgary.
He was dominant against Calgary in those 3 games. I think he had 4 sacks in the two before. I don't have that written down, but he's been dominant against Stampeders, and he's got to carry it now because they're going to need him against the Alouettes. If you go
back to the West Final last year in 2019, AC Leonard beginning with that game is basically at a sack a game, and there's 3 games he didn't play, but when he's played, he's been very impactful, and it certainly underlines the wisdom of the decision not to bring back Charleston Hughes.
Exactly. And every game is. And one thing about AC Leonard, he's not a big showboater. He doesn't want the attention. I think the worst thing that could happen, I know we talked about the failing to supply a drug sample and the subsequent actions, it had to hurt him to come from the public like that, because he is not a public guy. I've had more times he just said, no, I don't want to talk now. He's really a hard guy to get to open up. He's just shy, I think. But boy, he's staying out. Because imagine, like, if Charleston Hughes was a bit of a self-promoter, I think we could say, and popular. Like, he was fun. I liked his celebration dances. I think that's part of the game. So maybe AC Leonard, if he was a little bit more celebratory, a little more expressive.
Well, he's on the field though. He's a pretty exuberant player,
but not off the field. He's not.
Off the field, he's very reserved. And I've never interviewed him. Now, you do a lot more interviews than I do, but he's not quoted very often. And
it's hard to get him to say anything.
But he's letting his play speak for itself. And it's interesting though. I mean, I just look at this game the last week, and a lot of the things that people were harping on are still things that can be harped on. But the tenor of the discussion is to an extent influenced, and the harshness of the criticism mitigated by the result. But I look at it, the offensive line had to improve. They allowed 4 sacks. They were expected to be more explosive through the air. They weren't. They cut down on penalties, but there was a absolute boneheaded time count violation.
Yeah.
One of the boxes they did check off was stop the run. They did that tremendously, especially
in the second half. Did you think the offensive line played better in the second half, though? You know, there had to be a reason, some reason, why they had a little more success. I think the offensive line was. I know it's pretty hard to give credit because they've been pretty bad over the last little while, but I thought they played better in the second half. I think Cody had more time.
Well, you look at the play before the Kyran Moore touchdown, though, and it was everything that Cody could do to get the ball away because he was under siege there.
Yeah, but
they also built in some protections too. They started off the game with I think it was a 7-man front, and I think they tried to scheme their way around some deficiencies too. But I mean, Calgary got a sack on a 3-man rush.
I know that. I remember that one. I was going, holy smokes. There were a lot of similarities in the first part of that game that made you think, oh no, they're going to be in trouble.
I felt like I was going to write in the same column. Yeah. You know, like, how do I cut, paste, and just revise a few words?
But the fact they held Calgary to a field goal instead of a touchdown was significant, I think, on that first play, which is, 4-3. But I think that was significantly maybe not as much. Maybe motivation-wise, more maybe emotions and stuff, and momentum says that they're not in this position of being down a touchdown quickly. It's only a field goal. Maybe that helped a little bit.
Well, if you look at it too, I mean the interception right off the bat, it was an ugly interception. I'm not sure what happened on it, but there was just nobody near anybody. It was just like it was a Texas League fly ball that was intercepted, and so that's your first series. And you throw that kind of interception, and that could be so deflating. But the Rough Riders, like you said, were able to hold Calgary to a field goal. And Calgary got down to into the red zone, and ends up with a field goal. And you got to remember too, you get the interception by Dozier, and then right off the bat, first play by Calgary is 33 yards to Markeith Ambles, who had scored a 71-yarder on Calgary's first play from scrimmage the previous game. So then bang, they hit Henry for 17 yards. And suddenly they're on the 10-yard line. They've been intercepted just past midfield. Riders were just past just outside of Calgary territory when Cody Fajardo was intercepted. And suddenly it's zing, zing, and Calgary's in the 10-yard line. Mm-hmm. And then they hold them to a chip shot field goal. Well, then the Riders come out again. They have to punt. And then it was incompletion, sack, punt. And then the next drive, the Riders fumble the ball away. So you're thinking, oh, well, it seemed like a better start was of the essence for the Rough Riders, and yet they came out of it. They ended up being 3-3, and that was huge, just to kind of weather that storm.
Yeah. Do you think they weather the storm with John Ryan's having a sprained ankle and Brett Lowther punting?
Well, what do you think? It depends. I guess we might see a global actually have an impact upon a game for the first time since at least for the Rough Riders.
Well, there's 2 global punters on the roster. There's Ben Scrutton, I think that's how you pronounce the names, and I hope I got Kjær Verdvik's names right too. He's the Norwegian punter. He has a lot of NFL experience, which is surprising. He played with 5 teams and some pretty good numbers. I think he played in 1 regular season game, and they're both pretty accomplished university kickers. Scruton was with Scruton. I'm assuming that's how you pronounce it. Scruton was with Hawaii, had a 44.1 yard average. Verdvick was with Marshall, and we all saw that movie, so we all know Marshall intimately with Marshall. He had
The other former Rider receiver, Rhett Dawson, is Red Dawson, who was one of the assistant coaches on the Marshall team that was nearly all of them were killed in the 1970 plane crash. Red Dawson wasn't on the flight, so there's a Rider connection to the Marshall team from 1970.
Great movie too. Football movie, well worth watching, absolutely. But Verdict, I was reading, had a 92-yarder against Old Dominion as a punter with Marshall, so he probably has. He's had the best leg. Looking in practice, I have to admit, I'm not as focused on the punters when the number one punter is John Ryan. You don't think too much of the other guy's ever going to get a chance, but he looks like. So we'll find out more at practice if John Ryan can go. What happens with the two global punters and stuff? It just adds another little, maybe a layer to this one, that because the Australian connection. Look at Calgary. Cody Grace can punt
tremendous,
like just a leg, like he's so far ahead of everybody else, and his leg is just so powerful. So
what I don't get though, is why didn't the Riders build any insurance into their roster? You've got to dress a global player anyway.
Well, their insurance is Brett Lowther, Rob. He works on punts every day.
Yeah, but why not have a what if Brett Lowther were to get hurt? Why don't they, if you got to use a global spot anyway, why not make that spot a kicker? You've got 3 of them in town, yet none of them are dressing, and then suddenly your punter gets injured. It would seem to me that their better option as a number 2 punter was a global player as opposed to Brett Lowther. Why, if you got to dress that player anyway, why don't you have him on the roster as opposed to a fullback who's not even being used? It would seem to me to build a safety net into the special teams would be a lot more productive use of a global player than the mannequin approach.
You're way ahead of me on this history. I can't remember the last time I saw a punter get hurt with the Riders. Maybe Jamie Bourne many years ago when he made that tackle on the sideline and he hurt his neck. That's going back a long time.
Jamie Bourne was a safety playing punter, but
yeah.
But still, why not? I mean, why not build in some security regarding your kicking game? You've got to dress a player anyway. If Lowther were to get hurt, what would they have done then? So.
Well, they probably would have gone to, I don't know who punts by now.
Would
Nick Marshall, maybe? I don't know. It doesn't go down.
Yeah, but John Ryan, I guess, would have been their option as a place kicker if Brett Lowther gotten hurt. But why not use that import spot for a kicker? That just it gives you a backup plan. You've got reinforcements everywhere else on the roster, but you don't have one for your kickers, and you got to dress that player anyway.
It would work with Scroton because he was a DB at Hawaii too, before he became a punter in his senior season. See, my notes there are helping. Look at that, eh? So I did a little bit of research before this Rider Rumblings. But anyway, Rob, let's just touch on some of the other things around the league before we head off here, because I think there's been
Nick Arbuckle to Edmonton.
Holy smokes, that guy's been on. He's seen more stadiums than I have this year.
My goodness.
That Nick Barker, and last week was Trevor Harris going the other way, and Marcel, and what do you think? Calgary
gets fired.
And basically, these quarterbacks are getting traded for a bag of hockey pucks. These guys like a conditional for, I think, was a conditional 4th or conditional 3rd. I saw too many. There were too many tweets, but
I mean, Nick Arbuckle was supposed to be the guy in Toronto.
I mean, the word was here.
Hey, 2 years ago, Toronto ends up trading a quarterback, and that quarterback ends up winning the Grey Cup. It won't happen with Nick Arbuckle in Edmonton this year, but maybe they've found the answer just through a roster dump at the end of the year. I still don't understand why Toronto was soured on Nick Arbuckle.
I don't know. I don't like. We both know McLeod Thompson last year led the league in touchdown passes. Last year, 2019.
There's a lot of garbage time touchdown passes.
Yeah, I know.
There's a bit of an asterisk because quarterbacks were getting hurt.
Yeah, so that was kind of, but he still led the league. I guess you got to take that. But I was surprised to see Arbuckle go. I thought he was going to be the guy to come in and guide them through things, but maybe they really.
It makes it interesting too, because the Riders have to play Edmonton twice, and suddenly, with Edmonton, if they're playing Arbuckle instead of Cornelius, that might be a tougher matchup for the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and that's half their remaining schedule.
And they've got to play Arbuckle ahead of Cornelius, don't you think?
Yeah.
We dozed through watching him play. He's just not ready yet. And then there's nothing against him. But
we see some of Trevor Harris this week if Schultz should falter.
Yeah.
Suddenly they got a pretty good one in Montreal coming out of the bullpen.
Yeah. Does he think he's ready though? That's they're pretty. They don't like starting a guy too quickly. But
no, I don't think they'll start him. But I mean, if Schultz were to falter. you got Trevor Harris to worry about.
And we both know, sorry to see Marcel Desjardins go. I've met him a couple times. Seems like an okay guy. But Ottawa had to do something. They aren't going to fire LaPolice just because he's going to be around. They just don't have enough talent, Rob. Is there anybody on that Ottawa team looking and say, yeah, he could play on any other CFL team?
Dedman.
Dedman, and he's hurt.
Could you imagine if the Riders had a returner like that?
Oh. Well, they have Rashard Davis was out there. He was out there.
That's somewhat elusive, but I didn't mind him, but
I don't think he beat out Jamal Moore. I think Jamal Moore is still going to come back. I think he still has more potential. And the problem is Swerve, who's great at that, is they need him on offense, and they're trying to keep him fresh for both to play both sides. So
at least. But I mean, again, all those criticisms or deficiencies are muted a bit when you look at the result. And now the Rough Riders can. Even though they lost the season series to Calgary, they won that game that was going to put them back in an advantageous position. Had they lost that, it would have been a pretty owly week.
Yeah. What do you think they do down the stretch, Rob? Basically they have to win 3 of 4, I guess, or have Calgary.
Depending upon how Calgary does. But
yeah, Calgary.
But they're in a situation now where they control what they do. Yeah. And they were in peril of having to need a bit of help to get themselves back into the realistic race for a playoff game or for a home playoff game. And also it was a victory over a team where you can say, okay, that's a legitimate victory. It was so easy to write off the 3-0 start based upon the caliber of the opposition. And then they hit the skids against Winnipeg, and you're saying, okay, now they've played a real team. Look what's happened. And I think a victory over Calgary is certainly a sign that the Rough Riders still have an opportunity to be a formidable opponent over the remainder of the year, as opposed to let's squeak into the playoffs because nobody else is worse.
Yeah, and they actually, there's optimism in going to the playoffs too. It won't just be one and done. They can maybe go for a little farther, and it's kind of interesting. Be Hamilton on December 12th. It'd be interesting to be in Southern Ontario in the middle of December to see what kind of weather you get there.
Well, the last time there was a Grey Cup in Hamilton in December, the Riders played in it. And the last time there was a
which year was that?
1972.
72, okay.
And the last time the Bombers finished first in the West was 1972. So if you look at it, Grey Cup in Hamilton in December, Bombers finished first in the West. Riders were 8-8 in 1972. They weren't an exceptional team. I don't think this is an exceptional team. So I don't know. Maybe things are stacking up 49 years later. I was at that 1972 playoff game in Winnipeg, by the way. So hard to believe it's been 49 years since they've hosted a West final. We've got to remember they were in the East for a lot of years, and they
exactly. That's the got to point. It hasn't been that. But I remember I pointed out before that in '72 we're driving around Thompson, Manitoba, in my dad's Frontenac, listening on the radio because we didn't have it on TV yet, which is hard to believe. And I still don't know why we didn't have it on TV because I never got to ask my dad that question. But anyway. We did watch around, listening on the radio, and Ian Sunter, yay, for the Tiger Cats win.
And Ian, actually that year, Ian Sunter
was horrible.
He was horrible. The numbers were terrible. But the Riders' first game of the year, they played in Hamilton, and Ian Sunter kicks a field goal in the last play to win it. Riders played Hamilton in the Grey Cup again. Ian Sunter kicks a field goal in the last play to win it. And his numbers that year, I'm trying to remember. I think they were like, during the regular season, I'm going to check this out, but I think he was like 14 for 37 on field goal attempts.
Something about I don't ever doubt your numbers.
It was terrible.
He was horrible.
And that's all he did. He was their kicker. I'm just looking up his stats from 1972 because I am really annoying with stuff. He was 14 for 38 during the regular season, 36.8 yard average, 36.8 percentage. And yet he was 2 for 2 on game-winning kicks against the Rough Riders. So it's like 1970 in the West Final. Larry Robinson had a terrible year kicking the football, well below 50%. I think he was even below 40%. Yet he kicks a field goal into the win from 32 yards away to win the West Final in 1970. So the Riders playing against kickers that really had bad numbers, suddenly they all looked like Dave Ridgway when the game was on the line. So
anyway, well, we'll see what happens on this weekend in Montreal. It's supposed to be fall-like. Fall is here, I guess, eh?
Next It truly is. It's
Can you
hard to
believe our next Remembering will be in November? Like I was doing some stuff that involved November dates. I'm going, holy smokes, we're in November already, almost. We got a
Yeah,
little bit of time yet. We're not going to quite jump into it right ready, but holy, just think where we were last November, kind of wondering what we would do with each other,
yeah.
looking at each other
It
with
sure
no
is a
sports.
different vibe. And now it's just a matter of, okay, it's a sporting buffet, and it's so
Yeah.
great that so many sports are back. I'm loving
The
this.
World Series is going to be awesome.
I actually want Houston to win because I like Dusty Baker.
Yeah, I've always liked that. I like Rosero I can't remember his first name, but he just a clutch hitter and home runs and to the right field, left field, down the middle and stuff. Just an incredible player that we're watching right now.
It should be a good series. And
Yep.
baseball has just been so captivating these last few weeks. So
Something about the long
some of them
ball.
have been higher scoring games than the CFL has been putting on.
Yeah.
Which
Well,
is
Boston, I was kind of cheering for Boston a little bit. I don't know, I like their lineup top to bottom. Maybe that was just it, but I'll switch my allegiances to the Braves maybe.
And I don't know. Freddie Freeman seems like a nice guy. So
yeah. Was it Chris Taylor? Chris Taylor hits 3 home runs. That's crazy.
Yeah,
and it kind of strikes out for
really
the fourth.
Noted. Like he's not the type. Reggie Jackson hits three home runs in a game. You think, okay, that's Reggie Jackson. You don't expect it from, George Brett hit 3 home runs in a playoff game. Okay, well, it's George Brett. I believe is your favorite player.
Yes,
but
yes.
Did you name a dog after him?
I did have a dog. Brett was named after him. The only non-M in the family. It was a unanimous decision that he be named after George Brett. What a great little dog. Good old Brett. Lasted till he was 16.
Oh my goodness. Well, I hope I get the same longevity out of my beautiful cone-headed Candy.
Yes. Well, all right, Rob, you want to read our farewell speech?
Yeah, I'll read the outro. And I'm sure people will be relieved that it's over now that we've truly gone to the dogs with this podcast. If you enjoy the podcast, even though we have gone to the dogs today, please leave a review and a 5-star rating. It helps us grow the podcast. You can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. I get them on Apple Podcasts on my phone. If you'd like to send us a question, you can email Rob. I'm at rvanstone@postmedia.com, and we'll read it on the show. You can follow me. My name is, I believe, Rob. On Twitter at Rob Vanstone, or Murray. His Twitter handle is at MurrayLP. So that is the mandatory sign off.
It's funny. I noticed on my car the other day, I have Stitchers listed on my list of radio stations. I still don't know what Stitcher is, but I do have it on my car. So yeah. One day we'll do some investigative journalism and try to find out for 2 old goats like us what the heck Stitcher is.
Well, you've had like 3 surgeries. You should be familiar with Stitcher.
Well, you're so funny. You keep me in stitches.
Anyhow, on that wonderful note, for Murray McCormick, the well-sutured Murray McCormick, I'm Rob Vanstone with Candy, and we look forward to chatting with you again next week. Thanks for your time today, and stay healthy, stay safe. We'll see you. Bye.